I'm Dr. Amy Anderson, and this is the third in a series of 3 lectures that talk about the intersection between the Greco-Roman understanding of the world and of God and of matter and spirit, and that of the New Testament and of even Judaism as well as the background for the New Testament. We started in the first lecture with a series with a discussion of proto-Gnosticism, and that included mention of the difficulties that the Greco-Roman person had with the Judeo-Christian understanding of the body. And we went on in the second lecture to talk about sophism, because that's something that intersects with the Corinthians especially. But I wanted to come back to the question of the body. I think that there's a little more we ought to say. And as always, you can study this in much more depth, but this lecture will get you started and will give you some understanding of what happened and what caused some of the tensions between the Greeks and Romans who became Christians and their Judeo-Christian friends when they came into the church. Pagans and Gnostics in particular found the body to be the enemy of the soul. It was like a prison for them. The goal was to escape the body, both in life and in death. They believed that people who were very wise, notice the word wisdom again, Sophia, something that the sophists also claimed. People who were very wise would have so purified themselves from their bodies that when they died, they would go into a communion with the gods, if they were very wise, right? Everyone else would have to start over in sort of a new reincarnation, although their understanding of that was different than the Eastern view of reincarnation. Many of the Corinthians and the Greco-Romans in general brought their pagan views into their newfound faith. And they had felt free to be libertines because the body was not seen as eternal. The idea of the resurrection of the body must have been quite a shock to them. Not only had they been denying the material and physical part of themselves and saying that bodies, that only the spiritual was eternal, but this very body that with which they were continuing to commit sin was to be raised imperishable. That was just very hard for them, caused quite a struggle. Paul and others taught that because the body would be raised with Messiah, it first needed to be crucified with him. This was Paul's way of calling his believers to purity. It's not surprising in the face of this that the proto-Gnostics denied the bodily resurrection. They didn't want to admit that their bodies also belonged to God and to the Messiah and were intended for eternal glory. I have some great quotes during this lecture. First one is by Gordon Fee. When they first heard the doctrine of the resurrection, they, meaning the Greco-Romans who were coming into the church, they simply spiritualized it. Well, since they believed that they had already died and risen in Christ, and you'll see evidence of this realized eschatology, especially in Corinthians, since they believed that they'd already died and risen with Christ, death itself would be what brought about the full realization of the resurrection. But for them, it also meant the final end of the body, so that the spirit could return to God forever. So for them, the resurrection had already taken place. The Jewish view of the body, on the other hand, developed over many centuries. They didn't start their relationship with God already knowing everything. He taught them over time. But even though it developed over time, it always saw the parts of the person as being inseparable. They took creation as their starting point. God created the material world, all of the material world he called good. And then humanity had one additional glory placed upon them. Not only did they derive their creaturehood from God, but they were formed in God's image. So, including their bodies, right? They were created in the image of God. Here we have a quote from George Eldon Ladd. He says, "Salvation does not mean deliverance from creaturehood, for it is an essential and permanent element to man's, or we could say in more modern language, people's essential being. For this reason, the Old Testament never pictures ultimate redemption as a flight from the world or an escape from earthly bodily experience. Salvation does not consist in freeing the soul from its engagement in the material world. On the contrary, ultimate redemption will involve the redemption of the whole person and of the world to which the person belongs." Remember, all creation groans, right? The material world is part of God's future plans. This is the theology behind the doctrine of bodily resurrection, which only begins to emerge in the Old Testament, but which is clearly developed in Judaism and in the New Testament. Excuse me. The curse of death that came after humanity sinned is seen as a tragedy. This is wrong because these bodies that God made and called good are going to decay as a result of sin. Therefore, the need for the salvation of the body. And let me just talk for a couple of minutes about the understanding of the word soul. I see a very Greco-Roman attitude towards personhood in American and Western culture, and it's not the Judeo-Christian one, and we need to kind of check ourselves on that. The Greek or the Roman would have seen the person as being able to be separated: spirit, body, soul, mind, heart, all different parts of you. And therefore, we often talk about a person who has died as saying something like their soul or their spirit went to heaven. And we tend to connect soul and spirit as if they were the same thing. Soul, nephesh, in the Jewish understanding means person, not just some sort of woo part of us that can be separated from our bodies. Soul, some scholars will talk about embodied soul or ensouled bodies, but maybe to make it more simple, I'm a person. That's the word soul. I am a soul, and that soul has a body, has a mind, has a heart. And you can talk about those different functions and parts, but they don't separate in the Judeo-Christian understanding. So if I am to be resurrected at all, I must be physically resurrected as well as my spirit or whatever other entity that you would see as part of me. This is, again, very hard for the Greco-Roman mind to grasp. And we could talk about the implications of this for quite a long time. I'll leave that for now and finish off with a couple of more really significant quotes by Fee and Ladd. First of all, Gordon Fee says much as I just said. God made the person a whole being, body and spirit together in unity. Redemption, therefore, includes the whole person, not just his spirit. And here's where we tend to use the word soul to mean the same thing as spirit, but it's not. It's the whole person. For Paul, it is precisely through bodily existence that there is essential community between the present and the future. Such doctrines as the immortality of the soul in the Greek understanding of soul, or a spiritual resurrection without the body, are pagan. They are totally foreign to Paul and to the Christian faith. In the Christian creed, there is the affirmation, we believe in the resurrection of the body. When we say the creedal statements, that statement is part of the creed because it's part of our faith. And then to finally end, we have this very nice summary of this topic by Ladd. He says the Greek view is that God, or the gods, can be known only by the flight of the soul from the world and from history. So you leave the material world behind. That's how you can know God for the Greek. The Hebrew view, which is the Christian view, is that God can be known because he enters the material world. He invades history in Jesus to meet people in historical experience. That should make you feel very excited, and it should give you an entirely different attitude towards your physical body. This is the end of the series on the intersection between Greco-Roman thought and the New Testament, which will help you now as you read your New Testament to recognize what Paul was arguing with and to see that we need to grasp the thinking of the first century person in order to really understand our New Testament.